Well, hey there, Dr. V here, endocrinologist, back to talk to you about a few more tidbits about thyroid health. Today we're going to be talking about dietary supplements and how these can affect your thyroid. I get this question all the time in clinic, and I don't blame you. There are so many supplements out there. It's really hard to navigate, I think, or it would be hard to navigate for a consumer. Um, Also, there's a lot of misinformation online, and not to mention there's sometimes other providers, non-endocrinologists, who are prescribing substances or medications or supplements for thyroid health that are very well intended, but sometimes can be ineffective or just unfortunately in a few cases actually harmful to the thyroid. And they can also have some unintended effects. So really, whenever you're dealing with supplements or substances that you're putting in your body for the thyroid, it's best to consult with or at least talk to a board certified endocrinologist. So with that, let's delve into some of the facts about some of the ingredients in some of these thyroid supplements. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is iodine. The formation of normal quantities of thyroid hormone absolutely requires the presence of iodine because it's an integral part of the molecular structure of T4 and T3. The recommended daily allowance of iodine is 150 micrograms per day. For women who are pregnant, or we recommend around 200 to 250 micrograms per day. Most of us are going to be able to get that through our diet. Foods that are iodine rich are going to be seaweed, kelp, eggs, potatoes, and dairy products. Also, in the United States, salt is fortified with iodine. We have iodinized salt here, so it's exceedingly rare to find cases of iodine deficiency or iodine deficiency goiters and things like that here in the United States. So really, most of us don't need to add an additional supplement. The problem is that sometimes people hear, well, that sounds good. Iodine is needed for my thyroid. A little bit is good. A lot may be better. Well, that's absolutely not the case with iodine. In fact, our body has a biphasic response to iodine. So whenever we take a little bit, that absolutely helps us to produce T4 and T3 as we're supposed to. But as the concentration of iodine in our body increases more and more, it's going to reach a threshold which actually it causes the opposite and causes inhibition of our ability to make thyroid hormone. That phenomenon is called the Wolff-Chaikoff effect. And it blocks thyroid hormone production. Eventually, we'll escape from that inhibition after a week or two, and then you've really primed the system. So in people who are who have a predisposition to thyroid autonomy and their thyroid gland can still function, adding iodine is kind of like, it can actually precipitate hyperthyroidism, and that's not a good thing. It's kind of like adding kerosene to a fire. It's going to make it 10 times worse because now you've got a gland that can make thyroid hormone. It's predisposed to doing that, and then you've just given it all the building blocks that it needs to do that, and it's ready, and it just can make people very hyperthyroid. So that can be really dangerous. The ATA absolutely has something to say about this, and it's published in their guideline. I'm going to go ahead and just read it verbatim. They say, we recommend against the use of dietary supplements, nutraceuticals, or other over-the-counter products, either in euthyroid individuals or as a means of treating hypothyroidism. We particularly caution against the use of pharmacologic doses of iodine because of the risk of thyrotoxicosis and hypothyroidism in those with intact thyroid glands susceptible to becoming further dysregulated because of underlying thyroid pathology. So bottom line is, stop making the sea moss gel recipes and all that kind of stuff at home. They're more likely to screw up your thyroid than to be helpful. So the next one we're going to talk about is selenium. It does play a vital role in thyroid hormone metabolism, especially in iodothyronine deiodinase, which is involved in the conversion of T4 to T3. The recommended daily amount of selenium in the diet for adults is 55 micrograms per day. In pregnant women, it's a little bit more. about 60 to 70 micrograms per day. And it's readily available in foods such as meats, seafood, poultry, and nuts, and whole grains as well, especially Brazil nuts. So in just one of these Brazil nuts, there is about 96 micrograms of selenium. Remember, the recommended daily allowance of selenium is only 55. So just one of these is going to give you about twice as much selenium as you need for the whole day. So, do we need to supplement? What should we do? Let's, talk about the facts here. There have been a handful of studies. Granted, they are small studies that were pretty short in duration, that lasted, most of them, less than a year, and supplemented patients with either anywhere between 100 and 200 micrograms per day of selenium. And a lot of them did show reduction in TPO antibodies. TPO antibodies are the antibodies that are associated with Hashimoto's, or the autoimmune thyroid disease that causes hypothyroidism. And then a lot of them also did show some improved echogenicity, or less heterogeneity of the gland on thyroid ultrasound. However, none of them actually measured the concentration of selenium before, during, or after their studies. Also, none of them showed any kind of significant change in TSH or T4 levels. So unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, to date, there's no recommendation for selenium supplementation for autoimmune thyroiditis. You also have to consider, although it is rare, selenium toxicity is something to consider, and could be a risk if you are trying to supplement with selenium, or especially if you're using high doses. And that can occur, and case reports have been shown to occur, especially with concentrations exceeding 400 micrograms per day. Symptoms of selenium toxicity include nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, discomfort, diarrhea, hair loss, brittle nails, peripheral neuropathy, and then people tend to have kind of a garlicky smell to their sweat and to their breath. Next one up is tyrosine. Tyrosine is an amino acid that forms the basis of synthesis for T4 and T3. And it has been speculated that giving tyrosine supplements to euthyroid individuals will help to improve thyroid gland function. However, this really hasn't been proven or shown at all. There's no published data to support this claim that ingestion of tyrosine is going to help with the production, supplemental tyrosine is going to help with the production of thyroid hormone. So don't waste your money. Don't buy that one. Next, we're going to talk about ashwagandha. There is very little data here. Ashwagandha is an herb from Asia. And like I said, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of data. There was a very tiny study that came out of India on people who had subclinical hypothyroidism, which is essentially very, very mild, borderline normal, borderline hypothyroidism. It's just very, very mild hypothyroidism. And in this study, they looked at, they had 50 people, and they divided them up into 2 equal groups, 25 that would receive placebo and 25 that received ashwagandha. 4 people dropped out, so they ended up with 23 and 23 in each group. And in the group that received ashwagandha, they did see improvement in TSH and T4 levels. 8% had problems with adverse side effects during the study. So unfortunately, that's a very, very tiny study, and really not, in my opinion, enough information to be able to give a population recommendation on addition of ashwagandha. We also don't really understand right now how ashwagandha works, or how the physiology works with the thyroid. Also, we have to mention that there have also been case reports, more than one, on thyrotoxicosis in people who were ingesting ashwagandha. Thyrotoxicosis is just the medical speak for extremely high thyroid levels, or hyperthyroidism, above, or thyroid levels above normal. In one of the cases, it was a 32-year-old woman who was taking ashwagandha for fatigue. And then the other case, it was a 73-year-old woman who was unfortunately also had a cardiac arrhythmia because of the thyrotoxicosis called supraventricular tachycardia. Both of them resolved after they stopped taking ashwagandha. So right now, not enough data on safety to be able to recommend ashwagandha, and not enough data on large population studies for it. So the last one that we're going to talk about is thyroxine from animals, or desiccated bovine or porcine thyroid capsules. And so basically what that is desiccated porcine thyroid is chopped up pig thyroid glands, and desiccated bovine thyroid is chopped up cow thyroid glands. So there's a couple issues that arise with this. I mean, number one is that pills from animals are not purified, so they can contain some proteins that don't normally appear in human bloodstream. And there have been case reports of allergic reactions tied to some of these components within animal thyroid preparations. The second problem that comes from this is that the balance of T4 and T3 in animals is definitely not the same as in humans. So it's really an unnatural way to take thyroid hormone, and definitely not the perfect balance for us. There was a study that looked at 10 different over-the-counter commercially available thyroid supplements and analyzed them using liquid chromatography for the presence of T4 and T3. And they found variable amounts but relevant amounts of T4 and T3 in these preparations, to the point that the levels of T4 and T3 that were in some of these preparations were even higher than physiologic doses for people. So they were super physiologic, meaning that they were so much that they were if people would take them at the doses that were recommended on the bottles, they would cause them to be hyperthyroid. And so that is a real risk and can be very dangerous. If you recall, thyrotoxicosis can cause tachycardias or arrhythmias, which are abnormal heart rhythms and making your heart speed up too fast, or skipping beats, or going too quickly, and that can be quite dangerous, and unfortunately in some cases even fatal. So and then the other thing that can happen if you're taking thyroid supplementation above and beyond what your body needs, it's going to actually suppress your own thyroid gland's ability to make thyroid hormone, because your body's, just like this, use it or lose it. If you don't use your own thyroid gland, if you don't need it, if it's not making thyroid hormone, it's going to kind of stop producing thyroid hormone. So taking thyroid hormone in this way is kind of a haphazard way. It's just not safe, and can cause a lot of problems. So bottom line is that most dietary supplements just don't meet the scientific substantiation necessary for treatment of disease. And that is the case with most over-the-counter dietary supplements marketed for thyroid support or thyroid health or thyroid boosters or any of those things. And it's also really important to consider that these things are not without risk. Sometimes people think that because they're over the counter, or because they're dietary supplements, or because they're a plant, that they're safe and they're not without risk, but that's just not the case. Some of them can have real health consequences, especially in large pharmacologic doses. So just be careful about that. As for myself, my thyroid supplement, it's just a multivitamin. I try to eat healthy every day. I take my multivitamin. Mine happens to contain 150 micrograms of iodine. I think that is important, especially if you're pregnant. I think it's reasonable to make sure that your prenatal vitamin does contain the recommended amount of iodine in your prenatal vitamin, and then the RDA for selenium. But aside from that, anything above and beyond that, I think is not necessary and probably not going to add any additional benefit. Well, that wraps it up for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, click like below and subscribe. I'm Dr. V, Endocrinology, helping you with all your hormone questions and to find your perfect balance. If you have any comments, please leave them below and let me know any kind of topics that you might like me to cover in the future. Until next time, hasta luego.